Excellent. Right, so we should be good. Okay, welcome back to those that stuck around. Please come say hi in chat. Come let me know you're there. Have we got in Mr. Fruity Cakes? Hey dude. Jeff. Jeff Wyndham, Captain Mavic. Good evening. Good to see you guys in. So I haven't done a live stream in a while. I've just built a brand new PC that I needed something a little bit more up to date for rendering, because my old one was struggling a bit. A lot of my newer videos that aren't just DVR stuff, like the high definition videos from my GoPro, I'm starting to upload those in 4K, even though they're only 1080p videos. And the reason to do that is basically to try and cheat the bitrate, because as many of you know, the bitrate is so appalling for 1080p videos for any kind of sport or motion. A lot of the time I'll be really happy with an edit. You know how long I spend on my edits, like the last one I did with the Archon V2, and then when I saw the quality of or rather the lack of quality, the lack of bitrate, especially around some of the fields I fly, you just end up with this blurry mess, which I just hate, and YouTube just absolutely tanks the bitrate on 1080p videos. So by upscaling it in Premiere to 4K, you then, not even watching it in 4K, if you then watch it in 1080p instead of 4K, either or, you'll get the higher bitrate. So the 1080p videos look better if you cheat it this way by uploading in 4K. It's a ridiculous thing to have to do, but yeah, I need all the bitrate I can get to give you guys the best possible quality flight videos. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. But yeah, since putting this new PC together, rendering stuff in 4K can just take so long. It takes ages for stuff to get actually sorted in YouTube anyway. Let me know how the audio is. Is this audio okay for you guys? Let me know if it's clipping. I think it looks like the source volume looks pretty reasonable to me. So hopefully you can hear me pretty clearly. Isle of Mull FPV, hey brother, thanks for tuning in. Fantastic. So where's everyone tuning in from? Let me know what part of the country are you in, or what part of the world are you in, should I say. Most people in the UK here are fast asleep, except for the insomniacs like me, and I certainly know Mr. Fruity Cakes as well, and burning the midnight oil well past. So couple of things we can talk about today. So I've been getting quite a lot of stuff turn up. It's been a little bit of a kind of mix of reasons why I haven't been uploading quite as regularly as I'd have liked to. Actually, I think I've been fairly regular with the flight videos, but not too much in terms of bench stuff. And there has been a lot of stuff arriving, a lot of micro stuff. And the problem is, a lot of that micro stuff, I've only really had the option to fly it indoors until recently, where the weather has suddenly decided to become summer in the middle of February, which is concerning. It's slightly weird. Not that I'm complaining. It's nice to see the sun. So yeah, let's quick look at the chat. The audio makes you sound British for some reason. Yes, I'm afraid it's going to do that. Indiana, New York, hey guys, good to have you tuning in. Mr. Fruity Cake says tractors. Yes, I will get onto that. We'll talk about that. I've got a nice laugh for all of you that would like to have something to giggle at this evening. After this live stream is done, I'm probably going to edit it slightly, but I will upload it as a video for those that miss it. To be here live right now, but I will be getting on to something that will definitely make you guys laugh, something that's never happened to me before. So yeah, we will get on to that at some point. Something I can talk about right now. This is something that has turned up for review, and it is the everything that I'm going to talk about. I will be adding links to the description after this goes back up live, after I've inserted all of that and decide to publish it. But this is the 249 Plus. Gearbest sent this over to me. It's a Diatone model. And I think it's one that T-Motor have also done a version of as well. And I know there's reviews out in the wild of this guy already, and you know I like the 2.5 inch micros. I've got lots of videos on various 2.5 inch micros. I have a lot of fun with them. I think they fly really big. And in terms of how this one flies, it's actually really good. I've got a kind of mixed feelings with Diatone at the minute. I mean, I reviewed their really early stuff. You can go back to earlier videos of mine, like the very first quads they put out back in the day. And I kind of like Diatone when they used to release a couple of quads a year. And now they've caught on to the trend that so many others have, which is just to kick these out one a week as fast as possible. And it's kind of sad because Diatone, I think Diatone as a company, they're very receptive. Like I speak with the engineers there, or one of the product designers certainly, and you know I've chat through him with some of the engineering team, and they really do care about putting good products out, and they think hard about the design. They always try to make things really neat, and there's not just a case of let's get the components and smash it together and get it out. You know, I don't get that impression from Diatone. They always put a lot of thought in it, and they welcome feedback. And in the past they've made some really great quads, to be honest with you. I've got some good flight videos and had some great flight experiences with Diatone stuff. But this one, there's a lot of the Diatone trends that I really like in here. Let me just get a view where I can see what I'm showing you here. Can you see just how immaculate the soldering is? Diatone stuff's always like this. It's really like all the wiring's laid out really nicely. All the soldering shiny. You know, I'm a stickler for great soldering, and I often talk about sort of my tips for soldering and how to get really good quality, shiny, decent solder joins, and how important it is. You do it right. You'll do it once, was the thing I always say about soldering. You know, make sure you do a good job. Don't just smash it on there and have solder spikes and things looking nasty, because it'll fail on you somewhere. It'll crash, it'll fail, you'll be redoing it, and you just don't want that. You want your quads to be flying nicely. But yeah, this Diatone, just like all the others, everything's well thought out. It's nicely laid out, and the soldering's absolutely immaculate. And in terms of the flight performance of this, I'm sort of in 2 minds a minute where I'm going to do a full bench review on this guy, but I thought I'd give you a heads up on a bunch of bits I've got here to show you right now. But it's a monster. I was so impressed with this, and on 3 and 4S that the flight quality of this is fantastic. It flies absolutely awesomely, just infinite power as well. And actually on 3 and 4S, normally I'll find 3S a little bit lackluster for the kind of acro I want to do, where I really want to push it or reverse pop or do any of the stuff which I do on the 5-inch quads. I like to have that pop there, and I found that this actually, it did that really well. There was a bit of confusion about the motors on these, because if I spin them around here, I don't know if you can see that little logo there of a snake, and I certainly know one reviewer that tended to allude to the fact that these were Cobra motors, and that kind of duped me as well. I was actually chatting with Andy RC about this, and he pointed it out that they're not. They're actually the Mamba motors, 3B Mamba motors, which is apparently it's one of the guys who left. I think he left Emax, or he was one of the guys who designed the RS series. So good motor designer, and the Mamba motors have actually always been pretty good. And these are no exception. These are great. On 3 and 4S, Jesus, these have so much power. I mean, some of the power loops I was doing with this, it was just like to the moon power. I totally put it there with the kind of performance of a 5-inch. It was just crazy. So the power and performance, everything about this was really good. Sorry if you're putting stuff in the comments. I will get round to looking at that. I'm just going to finish my little talk on this quickly. Now, Diatone have kind of been stuffed here, and this is where I think this is why at the minute I'm not going to be able to recommend this as a product, and it's all to do with the Runcam split that's in here. So this is the split V2. It's just got the single board in it. Now, Runcam kind of did something, I think maybe a little bit backhanded here, which was that they were getting a lot of people complaining about jello with the Runcam 2, and I think part of the problem with that basically comes down to the size of the lens. And if you look at something like the Caddx Turtles, which tends to not suffer these problems, and I've got one just sitting here, I'll bring this into view. This has a full size, like an M12 lens, and if you look at the size difference of the lenses here, you can see it's pretty significant. And the lens lets a lot of light in. You don't have these jello problems on the micros with the Turtles, certainly with the V2. It's been very, very. That's actually my go-to at the minute. I really do like the quality of what you get from the Turtles, and this is out of another quad I'm going to talk about in a bit. But yeah, that is basically the biggest problem with this. And they sort of stuffed Diatone a little bit here, because Diatone had to deal with the fact that there was just a whole ton of jello with this quad, and mine was no exception. I took this out, I flew it, and as soon as I reviewed the flight footage, jello problem exists. I've got a version since then that has basically had modifications to it to try and combat this. And if I just spin this round so you can see it, can you see these rubber dampeners? They've put some silicone O-rings under here, under the front, and then if I spin this round, they've also put two under the standoffs here at the back. So the result is this whole frame at the top here, can you see it's got a little bit of movement? Now, I can see Diatone have made the best effort they can to try and sort this out, and at least they've done something about it, but unfortunately it's just not going to fix it. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm probably going to do this, I'm going to take the split out of this and I'm going to put the Turtles in there with the M12 lens in it, and I'm pretty sure our jello problems are going to disappear. So yeah, Diatone have kind of been left with this problem. They've hacked a solution, and unfortunately I don't really think it's worked. Running on 3S and experimenting with the amount of tension you put on these bolts under here will change the frequency of that dampening effectively. The more you tighten them, it will possibly lower the frequency of vibration to that, and if you loosen, that will make the frequency a little bit higher. So silicone dampening is the same with rubber dampening on a flight controller. It's just doing physically what a software filter does on your flight controller. It's kind of doing the same thing. It's just a mechanical version of. And unfortunately, there's no kind of tension that you can put those bolts at where it's going to do the job. It's unfortunately it's not going to work across the frequency. It's not going to work outside of the frequency of that. Or around the frequency of that vibration that's giving us jello. There's just no way around it. But it's a damn shame because this thing flies so well. So if you were going to get one of these, I'd say the non-HD one would be probably be the one to get. And then if you want to upgrade, then buy a Turtles and put it in, but don't get the one with the split Mini 2 in. The reason I think Runcam are a little bit backhanded about this was because I believe they've started supplying the split Mini V2 with I don't know if they've actually called it the V3 now, or if they've just called it the V2 and all of a sudden it started showing up as a product with an M12 lens in it. But as you can imagine, just doing that and not making an announcement about it, not really talking about it, has left people who've just bought one and got the smaller lens pretty upset. You know, it's a bit of a backhanded thing to do. You should really make a statement, say you're sorry, and write it for the customers who are loyal to Runcam. You know, they've made some great products in the past, so I don't like it when companies do that. I think that's pretty uncool. And like I said, they've kind of stuffed Diatone a little bit in the process here. But that's where we are with the 249 Plus. It flies fantastically. It's a monster. I wasn't particularly pleased with the PIDs. I think the PIDs are not just doing my usual beast mode with the throttle. So you'd probably be talking about 4 minutes on a 550 milliamp 3S 5060C. That's what I was aiming for. 4S, I tend to fly the AC 650 milliamp 75C. I love those batteries from Micros. They're not as heavy as the 850s, and they have all the performance, like 4 minutes of great performance. So they're a great battery to go with. You are lawyer. I do get massive jello on my Split Mini 2, even on my Acrobat. Yeah, it's that lens, and they know it's the problem because they've changed it. But they should have told people about it, and they should be writing it for people like you that have bought it already. So yeah, I think that's a bit of an uncool move on Runcam's part. Can the larger lens actually fit in there? That's a really good point. Probably not. It's probably a case of crack the Dremel out. Let's have a look. Let's see. Yeah, I think. Oh, I don't know. No, it's marginal. You'd probably have to Dremel that a little bit. I think there's enough material where you could Dremel it a little bit, or it might even, if these will bend a little bit, I think it'll probably be okay. But yeah, with that size lens, it's just it's not going to work. Let's have a look. What else have we got here? Yeah, this is the other problem with the Turtles, the latest Turtles at the minute. You can't get the damn thing anywhere. I had a friend who's unfortunately he's closing his shop just because that's kind of the way things are going. It's a very difficult market to survive in. He had a Turtles V2 kicking around, so I managed to get one off him, thankfully. The camera screws look like they could rip out easily on the... No, there's enough material there. I don't think that's an area that's going to have too much. I mean, I did crash it a little bit. It seemed fine. It really depends on your area where you're flying. I don't think you're going to have a problem if you fly in the sort of places I do. It's the hard concrete areas. Then you have to think a little bit more carefully. I'm scared of flying around concrete. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Although you can get the best Bando stuff, if I'm going to fly concrete, I'll take 5 quads I don't care about, and then I'll get some good footage. But I wouldn't take my shiny Archon anywhere near one. I just couldn't bear to scuff it up. I know, what a tart. My first Leader 120 is still going strong. Yeah, I totally get that. Again, in terms of the Leader stuff and full speed, how do I say this? I mean, the early stuff was great. I did a lot of videos on the early Leader, and I did a lot of modifications to it. I still think Lewis does a great job with his products. The problem is, like all of these companies at the minute, everyone's rushing to get a product out, and I just wish they'd take their time and really properly beta test stuff. Get these out to reviewers and pilots, and make sure. The problem is, there's a lot of this stuff is coming to us at the same time it's coming to you. And that's bad because, I mean, I had this with Beta FPV recently, and we're going to move on to that shortly. I've got one more thing I want to show you, and then we'll go on to the Beta FPV stuff, because there's a fair bit I want to talk about with that. But yeah, people are just rushing products out. That's kind of the way it is. So some other stuff to quickly talk about. Let's do some fast fire stuff. I did do, finally, I'm so sorry I took so long to do my flight footage on the Tyro. That's how I ended up finishing things up in terms of aerial placement. Just use a couple of zip ties off the back. And yeah, it's great. And so far, can you hear this? No noisy bearings. I'm so pleased to see the bearings have been holding up better than the first version of the Tyro 99. The bearings on that were just trash. It flew great. I really think that's a great copter, but the bearings are trash on it. They went far too quickly. The bearings are holding up great. There's no noise on the video FPV feed. Smart audio works. Everything just works really nicely. For $79, this is great. Just for beginners, people getting into it, the idea of I've said this in the review, getting people into building it and having an appreciation for the parts is so important. Understanding how the quad works is better than getting a bind and fly, plugging it in and not knowing if they're about to do some damage to themselves or others. You learn how this thing goes together, you have an appreciation for it, and you're going to be safer about how you operate. You're going to care about the quad. So I encourage people to go this route. And for that money, I mean, Jesus, do you know how much money I spent on my first quad? I mean, we're going like back 7 or 8 years here. It was just hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I remember the flight controller, the GPS, those 3 things were about 350 quid just for those 3 things before we even got onto the frame and the motors and everything else. The motors you had to balance with lots of tape. They weren't even slightly imbalanced. They were horribly out of balance. I'll show you that one day. I've still got it up on the shelf. It's colossal. Franking quad is what I call it. But yeah, Tyro 79 was great. Thoughts on the first person Q says thoughts on the Tyro 109. So they've offered to send it to me. I'll have a look at it. It's pretty much the same as the Tyro 99. They've now added smart audio, a Caddx camera. There's a few little tweaks. I just hope they've added silicone wire now instead of plastic insulated wire for the motors. It really winds me up that they do that. You're aiming at beginners. Don't give them, you know, something that's just a nightmare to learn to solder with. Just scare them away. So yeah, I've asked them to send it, and I have, you know, twice I fed back to them about the silicone wires and various other bits. I hope they listen, and the 109 solves a couple of those problems. Frank says, "Oh yeah, I hated balancing my motors back in the day." Yeah, the way to do it for anyone that's interested is you used to have to put, or the real kind of precise way of doing it was to put a laser pointer on the arm, rev the motor up, and then you look at the laser pointer on the wall, and if the arm was vibrating a lot, you'd get the laser pointer would be drawing a big ball on the wall, and then you put some tape on the side of the motor, spin it up and see if it got better or worse. And if it didn't, or it got worse, you'd move the tape round, you'd rev the motor up again, and you'd aim until that dot was very small on the wall. And yeah, very imprecise, but it worked, and you managed to get your motors balanced. Pretty hilarious. And you see, obviously now these things are balanced with so much precision. You know, you guys don't know how good you've got it. I'm sounding so old, I know. Other bits and pieces, I haven't talked too much about it, but let me just pop this on the bench. This is the new Menace Numbskull. So this is a 2.4 gigahertz patch that Menace have released, and I think there will be a shift over to 2.4 video. It's really, I chat with Greg at Menace about this, and my biggest concern really is it's the size of the antennas, because as you go to a 2.4 Omni antenna for a quadcopter, that's a beast. It's not a small antenna, it's a big thing. You know, it's significantly bigger than my goggles here. I mean, look, there's the Bandicoot, so you can see the difference between a 5.8 patch and the 2.4 patch. But one thing I did suggest that he does is I mean, I found that linear can still be really great. It can still a good diversity receiving module on your goggles can still do great things with a linear antenna on the quad. So a 2.4 linear antenna, we're used to those. We have 2.4 fifth and quarter wavelength antennas on our quadcopters for the reception for those of us that fly on 2.4 with our radios, and we know the length of those dipole antennas. That's perfectly serviceable. So really this is aimed at people who are flying Crossfire, who are flying 800 megahertz, 900 megahertz if you're out in the States, and you're already running that on your Crossfire, because obviously you can't run a 2.4 system and then a 2.4 video. That's going to go horribly wrong. Never do that. But if you're running Crossfire, you can also then look at running a 2.4 video, longer wavelength. It bends over things and round things and penetrates stuff better. It really will be fantastic if we can nail that. But really it's about getting the best possible reception on the quad end without the antenna being too big. If they can nail that, for people like me who are flying Crossfire, I would be very interested in moving to 2.4. So the other thing that will require a 2.4 module, so there is a whole expense shifting over to that. But I will be testing it. I will be getting a 2.4 module, and you know, I will say now, I don't fly anything other than Menace pretty much. I just love the performance of their stuff. I think, Greg, if anything, his products are too cheap. There's such good performing stuff. They're consistent. So if you ever ask me what my choice of antenna are, it's pretty much always Menace. It's just been great stuff. This is the other one of theirs, the little 5.8 Thrasher, and there's been a lot of talk. Painless Lee did a chat on, and I do a podcast which is on every Thursday. I haven't been on for the last few, but called LDO, Let's Drone Out. That's every Thursday night at 8 PM. You should join in, check that out if you're around. We did have a chat with Greg, and he talked very specifically about the importance of not wrapping your 2.4 antennas in TPU. Because TPU is absorbent and it often contains a fair amount of moisture in it, and that actually changes the frequency of what's being broadcasted, and it will essentially detune the antenna, which is not ideal. So he was very careful about choosing a material which is passive to the radio frequency, and keeps the antenna tuning good but still offers protection. So you shouldn't have to wrap your antenna in TPU. So this is the Thrasher. Again, I'll be doing some more testing on this. I've done some preliminary testing on it, and it's as good as all the other Menace stuff. Just works fantastically. On the goggles, I always use two patches. I use the Pico. The Invader I had before. The Pico is just that little bit better for me, and of course for the linear antenna I use the Bandicoot. Just fantastic. Really great for the micro stuff. Keep your questions coming in if you're have anything to ask. Can you ask Menace if Gorilla Glue coating of cloverleaf will affect reception? Gorilla Glue, I don't know, but there's still that potential with glue for moisture to get in there, and bubbles and stuff like that. All of that will, bubbles will contain moisture in them. So I don't know. Possibly glue would be could affect it, but I don't know how much. And again, it's subjective to how far you're flying away, and if you're racing with other people, not that you can race on your own, I suppose that's an easy competition. If you're racing, I think it's more critical to get this stuff spot on, because you're making sure you're even less likely to bleed across the other frequencies that you're racing with, so you're being respectful to the people you're racing to, and if they're all doing the same, you should all have cleaner video. Everyone wins. Ryan Taylor, hey Ryan, are you using Rapid Fire? No, I'm not using Rapid Fire. I was offered one to check out, and I have had a go of one, but I am not. The reason I'm not is because it wasn't significant enough of a difference for me to leave my my Furious FPV module. My Furious has been brilliant. I really like the quality of it. And on the latest 3.8 firmware, it's fantastic. I just have nothing to complain about with the performance of that. Not enough to go and spend that same amount of money again to get Rapid Fire. It's the same with Clearview. I was offered a Clearview to look at, and I never kind of maintained the connection to actually get that sorted. I could go back to them and talk to them. However, Furious are bringing one out. They have a new one on the horizon, which is going to be following that same idea that Rapid Fire and Clearview are doing with the way that they're doing the switching. I believe, I might be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. So, be it that I love the Furious stuff, I will be checking that one out. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, and like Joshua did some great videos on the performance of the Rapid Fire. I'd be interested to know if Rapid Fire, whether they Immersion RC sorted out that problem with. It had a problem with certain cameras, I think, where you were getting non-colour pictures or strange flashing, and I don't think it was necessarily the fault of Immersion RC, but it was a pain for some people with certain cameras. So I don't know. That's something that we'll need sorting out at some point. One other product I want to talk about today, I've been getting, obviously you guys know I've been testing the Zing motors, and there's more coming on that. There's a couple of, there's one thing that I am going to look at, which is the Success, or however they've decided you pronounce that. I've been having a lot of luck, if you've been following my flights with the Archon, with 20x20 stacks. I've got a 6-inch Archon. I did 5 videos on that micro stack, which is an HGLRC stack. I've used that in both my 6-inch, tested up to 5S, and my Archon, performing beautifully in that. 20x20 stacks are really coming to their own. They're working in like 11 grams for the whole stack. The ESC, BL Heli 32, F4 flight controller, OSD, flash chip on there for your black boxing, VTX up to, I can't remember what it is, 500 milliwatts I think. Performing brilliantly, all of it, and 11 grams. I mean, what's not to love about that? But yeah, iFlight have sent me this one, which I will be testing to its absolute limit. So same kind of affair. BL Heli 32 comes with a load of hardware, and this claims to be up to 6S capable. So I'm going to be making a 6S 5-inch quad with this, and that's going to be on a prototype frame by my good buddy over at Halo RC. He has sent me a new his lightweight freestyle frame, which is called the Osiris. Let me just grab that and give you a quick look at that. So this is a prototype, and this is his new lightweight frame. I'm going to have to move this camera up a little bit so I can try and get as much of it in shot as I can. There we go, a little bit better, I guess. So yeah, this is the Osiris, and he's got a new bracing system in here which uses a dovetail joint to lock it in, but with absolutely minimal amount of carbon. And this guy, again, he's got the same thing with the 20x20 mounts in the front and in the back. There's a whole bunch of TPU mounting stuff like on the Archon that I still have to print, but very lightweight, very strong. And I will be testing the 1700 kV 2207s here. So this is going to be a 6S build, and a very light 6S build. So that is going to have this 20x20 stack in it. So yeah, 6S 20x20 stack, ultralight. There is absolutely no doubt that this build is going to go like absolute stink. So we're going to be giving that a good test on 6S, the iFlight stack, the iFlight Zing, and the Osiris. This is nearing final prototyping stages now, so I expect there'll be some announcements on the Halo RC Facebook page about this guy. They also have another their upgrade to the Nemesis, which was their last racing frame. I built a Nemesis and I absolutely love it. It's a little rocket, but that is going to be called the Ra. Let me grab that just to give you a quick look, and that is even lighter and even smaller, and that is this guy. And this is going to have two options. It's going to have a carbon plate option, same dovetail joint, super strong bracing on it. 5mm arms, just tough, tiny, and very, very fast from the footage I've seen so far of this guy. Yeah, ultralight. This is going to have, like the Nemesis did, it's going to have a pod design as well for TPU. I'm just looking around to see where my Nemesis is in my sea of quads. I don't know where I've put it. Oh, there it is. Hold on, let me grab it. So there is my original Nemesis with the pod design. I don't know, I didn't do a build video on this. This has got the Emax 20x20 stack in, but this was the original Nemesis. I'll maybe do a few videos on this because I kind of built this on the quiet and showed it off in a few live streams, but it's a fantastic little ripper. But yeah, that's going to be replaced by the Ra, a little bit longer bodied, and it's also a bit lighter, and it's going to have the pod option as well in TPU. So yeah, a couple of exciting new bits from Halo RC and from iFlight. And there's one other thing I wanted to show you, but let me just quickly check out what people are saying in the chat, 'cause I'm trying to keep my peripheral eyes split in two directions here. Isle of Mull FPV, Gorilla Glue cures with water, so presumably absorption is not an issue. Oh, okay, maybe so. That's probably something that just needs testing. That's good information though. Well pointed out. Locomotive 282, can you get the new Orca goggles? So I've spoken to the guys at Orca and they are going to send me a set of goggles. I always get a little bit scared when I'm asked to review goggles because I've lost contact with certain goggle manufacturers because yeah, I've been fairly brutal, but you know, what's the point in reviewing if you're not going to be objective? You've got to take the criticism if you've done something wrong, and yeah, there has been some. I've had some choice words about some goggles I've reviewed in the past. You know, right down to the ergonomics problems that we had with SkyZone, some ergonomic problems we had with some EV900s, and you know, there's some stuff by these companies that I love and I have spoke favorably about those, but everything can't be great. You know, if I was the kind of reviewer that said everything was great, then there wouldn't be much point trusting anything I say, really, would there? There's, you know, there's no point not being objective about these things, and in the hope that these manufacturers listen or at least slow down and take their time. But yes, the short answer is I will be getting the Orca goggles. I'm on their list, so I've been told by the main marketing guy over there has said you're on the list. We'll send you some marketing information and a set out when we're ready to do so. So fingers crossed that they've, you know, put the work in and they've seen the mistakes that other manufacturers have made, and maybe, who knows, we'll have a few new innovations on the table as well. Wouldn't that be nice? Orcas eat dolphins. I didn't know that. What's the time in the UK? It is currently about 3:20 in the morning. So I run very strange hours, I'm afraid. So what else can I talk about? Yeah, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention while we're here, which is, and then we'll get on to that. I did promise you something to laugh at, so I will show you something to laugh at so that you can go away chuckling to yourself this evening. But one other product I just wanted to talk about, which has arrived with me, which is this is by Topsky. Not to name the name of the manufacturer that I might have been fairly brutal with over a certain set of goggles, but moving on, they have. I've been sent. It was actually Patrick over at iFlight that sent me this over. He said, "Do you want to check out this watch by Topsky?" And I was like, "Topsky, all right, I'll see what it's like." But this is actually a really cool little gadget. As you guys know, I fly Fat Shark goggles. I don't fly with box goggles, but my EV800s, which I'm very favourable at those. I thought they were a great box goggle and very cheap for people starting. If you don't get on with Fat Shark style and you want to use the box goggles, they were great, and I still use them. I don't know where they're sitting right now. Oh look, they're here. See, proof that I don't just throw stuff away. And there it is. There's my EV800s, and I use these as a portable screen, and especially when I'm on the bench and I'm you know, when you're setting up a new quadcopter and you want to set the OSD and you're messing with stuff, the last thing you want to do is have to keep putting your goggles down, checking stuff up, look with the mouse, try and move something, put the goggles down. It's easier just to have a screen in front of you. But obviously you don't want to spend 80-90 bucks on one of these if you don't, you know, if you don't have to. I mean, it's a lot of money just to have something there, and when you could pull your goggles down over your face. This has kind of replaced that, and it's cheap, and it's actually pretty good. This little, yeah, Dick Tracy for the win here. I wonder how many people remember Dick Tracy. Here's a test of how old people are in the sitting there in the comments here. So this guy, 300 milliamp battery, I think. Let's have a look at a couple of the specs. It's a 320 by 240 resolution. 5.8 MMCX connection on the side with a little whip antenna, so I suppose you could change that out for an Omni, but it's been absolutely fine. Micro USB on the side for charging it. Charges pretty quickly, an hour or something. It doesn't take very long. 48 channels, and it's got a search feature. Now there is another one out there by Bosscam, and I did check with my friend. Let me see if I can, because I went to a little race meeting recently, and let me see if I can give you a shot of this. I think I can. Okay, bear with me. I'm just going to switch over here by going to window capture. There you go. So there's a picture. I don't know how well that's going to come out for you guys, but the Bosscam doesn't have the scan on it. It does have a load of LEDs across the bottom of it to show you the channels, which is quite nice, but the scan feature is just so much easier to use the buttons on the side of the Top Sky one. So it's the Top Sky on the left. I don't know if you noticed, we put them side by side and watched the same person race for a bit, and the Top Sky just had a better, clearer, brighter image. So I actually think this one, the Top Sky, is actually the one to go for, because it has the auto scan and the image is actually better. I would have said it's a bit 50-50 if the image is better on one, but the other one's good, you know, if it balanced out. But I just think the Top Sky has the edge in this instance. So yeah, this is the one I recommend. I can't remember you turn it on. Is it this one? No, it's top one. Let's turn it on. But yeah, it's got your little Top Sky logo, and then you get your screen pop up. I was just thinking if I had a whoop or something, I could turn on just to show you it. But yeah, I might just quickly grab something to give you a live feed. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, let's grab this. So I've got my it's my little 3D printed case with my Mobula in, my favourite little whoop. Had fun with that this evening. I'll be uploading a video of the fun I had with that at some point fairly soon. Let's grab one of these batteries. Actually, it's a 2S. I'm going to need one in there. Hopefully I've got enough voltage in here to kick this into life. Hope this doesn't beep madly. Oh, that's not on the right channel, is it? So, oh no, it is. There we go. So you can see that we have it's just a really nice little picture, but it's so useful. Everyone want to see my new PC? Let me show you that. My beautiful built water-cooled PC. Very happy with that. And there's you lot. But yeah, yeah, it's just a really good little picture. Try and get it a little closer and still say really crisp, nice and low latency. It just works fantastically. Really happy with that, and it's so cheap. This is that great screen to have sat next to you, and because it's obviously you can wear it on your wrist, but you can also just prop it up like that, and then it's sat there. Because this is the other problem that I have with this one, is that I always have to put something under it to angle it right. It's because it's got the sun shroud on it. I have to kind of prop it up at an angle. But this one, you can just kind of use the back of the watch strap like that and set the angle to what you want. So yeah, I really like this watch. So I'm going to put links in the description for that. But it's a cracking little thing, and it's super cheap. So yeah, I recommend that. Battery lasted, like, as long as you're conscious to turn it off and on between uses. Don't just leave it there on cooking. You get like a decent runtime out of it as well. I managed to get the whole night through using that and no problems at all. So yeah, very impressed with that. Very cool little product. Anyway, so we've talked about Mobula. Have you got any questions about that or any of the other stuff that I've showed you here? Please do ask. Like I said, I will be uploading this video. I'm going to do a little edit on it and I'm going to upload it, and I'll put all the links in the description. So within the next probably 12 hours, this will go up with all the links to everything I've talked about, if you want to check stuff out. But yeah, very, very cool. You guys, how many of you guys have got 3D printers? Because you may have noticed I've done a 3D printer review, and I've got another one to do fairly shortly. But I'm just loving the 3D printing stuff, especially printing my own TPU parts. That is just the coolest fun. So on to the final thing I wanted to talk about before I wrap things up, which is to talk about Beta FPV. So Beta FPV sent me the 85X over, and that quad is kicked up a bit of a storm, certainly over on the 2S Power Whoop group on Facebook, because there has been some problems with it with certain I know Andy had a problem with his, where his 85X caught fire, or no, it didn't catch fire, the ESC basically smoked. And he was flying it on 3S. And Beta FPV came out and said, we think we've identified the problem. And there was actually a decent bit of research. They put a document out and they showed, you know, buckets full of X85s that they went out and tested in different groups. And they tested some on 3S, some on 4S. And they found quite a low percentage of them had this kind of particular issue. You'd have to, I'd really need to get the document up, but I don't have it to hand to talk about why the ESC, they said an abnormality in the ESC, which was giving an odd waveform, and they said it was causing some desyncing, some weird stuff. And that was the cause of the problem. Now, the one I got, I had absolutely no problem, but the one thing I will say, I flew it on both 3 and 4S, and I thought it was brilliant. I actually didn't have any yaw washout problems, which I was fully expecting, and it tuned up beautifully. Now, the thing that I fed back to them, which I thought was important, was I thought their default PIDs were way too high, and I still maintain it's way too high. The 85X came with PIDs that were high, you know, 60s or 70s on the Ps, and P's and the I's doesn't really matter so much, but certainly the P's look too high, and the D's were like 55, 60, something like that. Again, that was just too high. The reason that's too high, we're talking about super high kV tiny motors and D-Shot 1200. That's an extremely fast protocol, and when you're running high D term on tiny high kV motors with D-Shot 1200, I think that's just literally an equation for smoke. So I didn't even fly their PIDs. I thought I do with every quad. I have a look at the PIDs, and if I think they're sensible, I'll fly them and then, you know, form an opinion on them. But I did with this. I thought, no, I'm just going to tune this from scratch. And I ended up with a great tune. And Nate, Mr. Shutterbug, who I spoke to quite a lot about this, I said, can you show me what your PIDs were? Because he tuned his himself as well, and he didn't have any problems either. And his tune was almost identical to mine, and we both tuned ours independently, and we both had great flying quads, and neither of them had this problem on 3 or 4S. And yeah, they tuned and they flew great, and I've got lots of flight footage to go over for that, to show and to prove that. And yeah, there was just no issue at all. There was no issue at all. And I do think a contributing factor to smoking those is going to be running with super high PIDs, especially high D term. And on something that small, you won't always hear it. Those frequencies are the pitch at which those motors would oscillate. Like a 5-inch motor at 2400 kV, when the D term oscillates, you've got a much better chance of hearing it. You can hear the warble, you know something's wrong, or the metallic ringing. There's something that gives it away. It's a lot harder to detect on micros because that's such a high pitch, it won't always come out in the flight, and you can't always tell by the temperature of the motor, because micromotors, especially on 4S, no matter what they are, they'll run hot anyway. They just tend to run hot. The ball bearings in motors are so small and not as numerous as you'd get around the race of a larger 5-inch quad with a larger bolt shaft size, that they can't stay cool. They're gonna get hot and they're gonna wear quicker, and heat's just part and parcel of micromotors, I'm afraid. So there's a lot less there in terms of audible cues for when something's going wrong in the tune, or visual cues and when something's going wrong in the tune. So you have to be more cautious, and I always tend to say start low, don't be lazy, and tune your micro quads up, especially ones that you're going to run on 4S from the ground up, until you find that sweet spot where it's all flying good, and then leave it there, don't go overboard. But yeah, my D terms were like 25. It was literally half the D terms that were suggested by Beta FPV, and I fed this back to them, and I was quite strong in my opinion about it, that the default tune was too high. So that's where I stand on the 85X. Anyway, I have got some flight footage of the 85X to show you. And the reason I can't complete my video is there was an incident with it, and I'm going to show you that incident. Actually, let me first show you. I've got 2 bits of footage I can show you, so let's just switch to here, and I can I don't know what your frame rate's probably not going to be too great here, but this is the 85X, not a 5-inch quad, which is what I wouldn't be flying it between myself and my buddy John if it was. But it flew great. You can see flips, rolls, No problems at all. I think you might see one loop. It's usually where you do the diving section of a loop that you see if that yaw washout thing is going to happen. There is something else that I need to kind of allude to when it comes to yaw washout. There is one very important factor on these quads to kind of stop that happening that isn't necessarily about the tune. But yeah, look, for instance, there we've got a inverted yaw spin on a whoop, you know, and that was predictable. It floated nicely. I told John I was going to hit him here to prove it was a whoop, so that's why I did that. But yeah, it flew fantastically, and this was maybe the first or second flight on it, so I was kind of getting used to it and used to how it flies, and yeah, it was great. Really impressed with the way that flies. But the thing I was talking about, the reason the Mobula, for instance, is one of the only quads that doesn't wash out when it's in a dive, like so many others does, it's the lightest of all of them, and light's really critical. So basically my take on what's happening from a aerodynamic fluid dynamic point of view with the washout thing, what I think is happening is to do with the ducts, and it is to do with the way in which the props bite into the air to maintain to be able to grab the air for yaw. When it's in a dive and the airflow, you've got quite a lot of turbulent air going straight over the front of the duct, and I think that is reducing the grip of the prop and the kind of bite that the yaw authority has to keep it sustained. And as you come into that dive and it's under that maximum pressure, at the bottom of the dive is when the quad's going to weigh it the most, because in the dive you've got the inertia of the quad adding to gravity, or adding to the weight of the quad because of gravity and inertia. So the quad's going to weigh more than it is in the bottom of a dive, and that's going to demand the most torque from the props and the bite on the air to be able to keep them stable in yaw. And that's when they tend to let go. So the lighter the quad is, the more authority those props have to keep the quadcopter straight. Now, the Mobula being the lightest doesn't suffer that, and flying the X85 on very light batteries actually not only yielded great flight times and great performance, but it literally got rid of that yaw washout problem. If I decided to chuck a heavier battery on it, say 400, 450 milliamps in 3S or 4S, I think that's where the problems would start to occur, and I guarantee I'd get that yaw washout. But for 3S, I used a 350 milliamp 60C, nice light 3S pack, no yaw washout problems, but not underpowered, but felt like it could have a bit more. And then 4S, I had two 300 milliamp Nanotechs 2S that I wired in parallel. I wired them in series, sorry, with a little series connector. And again, that actually weighed the same as the 3S. So it was still super light, loads of power, no problems with yaw washout. So that's my thoughts on yaw washout at the minute. But I do think the lighter you can keep the quad, that's really the ultimate key to getting rid of that yaw washout problem. Frank says, hi NJ, what's your take on props in or out? So that's a big discussion. Like we could talk for at least half an hour just on props in or out and the benefits of it. The short version of that is, I think for whoops, props out certainly gives you better cornering, but it's just a slightly different feel. I don't think it will make any difference to the yaw washout. Absolutely none. That doesn't make sense to me in a aerodynamic sense to me, and it doesn't make sense any other way. It just that I'd need to have quite a discussion with someone to convince me that props in or out can do anything to solve the yaw washout problem. It won't. But there is a feel difference on the tiny whoops, and yeah, I do think there's a cornering thing. If you're doing tight circuit racing and stuff, then I do think it feels quite nice in the yaw and turning. It does feel different. Let's just say that. The Mobula, which is, let me just double check the Mobula, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you saw my Mobula video, but if you didn't, go back and watch it and see just how crazy good that thing performs. Yeah, and that is props in. Show you on the camera there. There you go, props in. And you've seen me do all those same maneuvers, inverted yaw spins, power loops, dives, crazy speed stuff. That video I did of that, I mean, I was sort of laughing while I was flying it. That it was like flying a housefly. The thing's just crazy. So yeah, props in could work absolutely fine. It's not something that is only going to, you know, it's the golden, you know, the holy grail for whoops. It's not to be running. It's not. It can be either. Just try both and see what you like. It's just a feel difference. So yeah, on to a video to make you all laugh. So the reason that I haven't been able to finish my review video on, oh no, it's not this one, hang on, let me just find the video. So I've only got DVR footage to show you. I can't show you the HD footage here, but I will show you. This is the X85. So here we are on the X85, and I was out with my buddy Stu, and we were out doing a bit of flying. And again, this was flying great. So let me just let's move a little further up. You can see some footage of me just ripping around with the X85 again, just sort of getting used to it and the power. I wasn't quite. This was back on 4S, so it was just feeling really nice. So there was a good example, a nice big dive, and it didn't just spin out in the yaw. You can see this is tuned great. Again, the Ds are at 25. They're not up at 55 like it was suggested with the stock PIDs with this quad. So yeah, dives, flips, rolls. I think there's an inverted yaw spin here somewhere you'll get to see. It's all just predictable. Great little quadcopter. They are sending me another one with the new ESC on it. So there you go. Inverted yaw spin. Absolutely. Just, it flew beautifully. But here, is it here? No, almost. I just, I don't know what happened. I just didn't put enough throttle in a maneuver here somewhere. And you'll see I deck it. It might be here, yeah. So yeah, there you go. So I end up stuffing it up, and we crashed here. And then I'd just been flying I think the Mobula. I was flying one of my other quads on the Nevada, which I use. And here I'm flipping back to my X-Lite. So I was like, oh god, where's the flip crash button? So I eventually find it and managed to just about flip this guy over. So here we go. Crash flipped over, and I thought I won't walk around and get it. And then I arm my quad, and then let's take off, shall we? Oh, anyone else spot that? Let me give it to you again. So we'll flip over, see if you guys can see what happens. So crash flip, go to arm, ready to take off. See if you can spot it. Yeah, that was a tractor. A tractor absolutely going full pelt. If all the acres in all the fields I was in, there happened to be a tractor coming down on the other side of the hedge to where we were. And by the time I'd heard it, I was like, what is that machinery noise? Let me see if I can find the frame with it. There it is. There's our agricultural vehicle. Fast approaching, and of course a whoop in the grass, and that guy high up in his tractor, there was no chance of him seeing it. And there's I think that maybe the last frame. Yeah, I'll go back one. Will I get the exact tyre frame? Yeah, it's kind of there. I think I'll get, there we go. There's the last frame for you. So Beta 85X. Perfectly sat in line with the left wheel of that massive tractor, heading over to the combine harvester that it was doing some work down the end of the field. So yeah, I was actually sad about this because it was such a great, it was flying great. I didn't have the problem that some did with the ESCs dying. So you probably want to know what survived and what didn't. It was looking pretty sorry for itself, but yeah, I think the only thing that survived, I'm pretty sure, was the Caddx Turtles, which is the one I pulled out. Let me just flip to the I'll just give you that one more time before I leave that video, so you can just chuckle to yourselves. Of all the tractors in all the fields, I found that one. Yep, there you go. Yeah, I was licking my wounds for the evening after that, but yeah, there you go. So unfortunately my X85 is now just a box of parts. There's the original cable for the Caddx Turtles. Thankfully I had a spare one, so I think the Turtles I have is fine. The canopy did actually protect it when it got flattened into the ground. It was fine, so I've put a spare cable on it and I'm going to repower it, and I think that's okay. The board is completely dead. It was actually banana shaped, so I had to kind of bend it straight again. There's a look at the VTX, and it does come with this little mini AXI antenna, which is really cool. And a nice LED board on the back. I mean, this is... Can I leave them a bad review for not being tractor proof? Do you think they'll mind? And my little FR Sky receiver. There is the 32-bit BL Heli 32 ESC, which is a nice, like, loads of capacitors around here. It was no noise problems. It performed great for me, and you can see how it mounts down onto the. You can see you got the pins there, so that it mounts straight down like that. See if I can just fit that on for you to show you. Still going to mount. I don't even know if anything lines up anymore. Probably not. Oh yeah, there you go. And then from the underside you'll access the USB like that. So I've really only got like a box of parts to show you. Here's the motors. Any of you laughing really hard like right now, I totally understand. But yeah, the motors perform great. 1105 6000 kV. Yeah, this is not the review I intended to show you guys, but there's the 85X. They did send me some spare frames. I could start to piece this back together, but I would at least, I know, need a new flight controller. This might have survived the ESC. I may end up trying to resalvage it, but they are sending a new one over so I can complete my review on it. But that's what happened with the 85X, but I hope that provided you guys a bit of a laugh. Walk it off, yeah. I can tell you my ever sympathetic friend and empathetic friend Stuart just immediately burst out laughing and fell to his knees, whilst I just went, did that just happen? And walked over, and it was kind of, that's, you ever want to know what happens to a Beta FPV quad with a tractor over it? It becomes a pancake 85X. But hey, I got the turtles out of it, so I think at least the turtles has survived. Anyway, there we go. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and sticking around. I think we've talked about a couple of cool things and sort of brought you up to date with what I've been up to and what's arrived here and what other stuff we're going to be looking at. So you can look forward to the 6S build for the Osiris. We're going to be doing that coming up at not too distant amount of time. We'll be doing that, and there's new stuff all the time. That 10, was it the 109 we said? I think it was the 109. The Eachine 109 is going to be coming, so we'll be having a look at that. So there's a bunch of cool stuff. So the printer that I'll be looking at as well is the Creality CR10S Pro. So we're going to have a look at that too, for those of you who are interested in that stuff. I also have some thoughts on the Tiny Hawk. I've been flying that a whole bunch. The Trash Can, which I kind of... Maybe we'll talk about that another time, but again, that's another quad with some serious jello issues that I'm surprised some reviewers didn't really talk about. Even though it was clearly present in their footage, they didn't decide to say, hey, this has actually got terrible video feed and it needs fixing. But it is very powerful, and it is kind of monster fast if you're into very fast for a maximum of about 2 minutes of flight time. So yeah, we can talk about that. But I've tried all of these. There's more of them coming all the time. I still maintain the Mobula 7 is the best from Acro. For the stuff that I do, it's just fantastic, and it's great indoors. I do have the HD version coming, so I'll be interested to see how that does. So I'll be testing that. I think that hasn't shipped yet, but it should be coming fairly soon. So yeah, I guess that will probably wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining me. I always love having you guys in and having a chat with you. And of course, you can always ask me any questions you like and ask me about anything here. Hopefully that stream was nice and fluid. I don't think we've had any dropouts like the first failed attempt. I think that's been okay. I think the audio's all right. So hopefully I can do a bunch more of these now we've tested this and got it set up and working. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you very soon, I'm sure. Until then, take it easy and I'll see you soon.